How does a game that had everything going for it just toss it all away? Dying Light was the unexpected hit of 2015, a cult classic that nobody saw coming. Its bigger and more expensive sequel, however, left everyone disappointed. So what happened? Well, sit back, relax, and let me tell you the story of how Dying Light fumbled its future. Our story begins in 2011. After the financial success of Dead Island, Techland wanted to move on to a grittier experience. However, Deep Silver, the game's publisher, just wanted a direct sequel, so they parted ways. Techland would partner with Warner Brothers, while Deep Silver would go on its own 10-year odyssey to get Dead Island 2 made. Not only did Techland want to make a darker game, they also wanted it to have Mirror's Edge style parkour. That parkour system, however, would prove to be very challenging to implement. Unlike Mirror's Edge, which has a very clearly defined path for you to follow, Dying Light would be an open world game, meaning that you needed to have the ability to climb anywhere and approach ledges from multiple different angles. This is very challenging to program, and all the game's quests even had to be rebuilt from scratch at one point during development because the team figured that the way they were going about implementing it was completely wrong. Techland would hire professional freerunners as consultants in order to make the parkour gameplay feel grounded in reality, even going as far as hiring David Bell, the creator of parkour himself. While it is unclear if these outside consultants were of actual help or a marketing stunt, it is funny to me that they hired the creator of parkour himself to help out. Like, imagine wanting to improve at basketball and hiring James Naismith. With the parkour problem solved, Techland now had to deal with an arguably even bigger issue: the perception around the game. Dying Light came out during a time when people were sick and tired of zombie games. Within a decade, people were soured with movies, TV shows, comics, and of course, games featuring these exact enemies. And it showed, because when Dying Light launched on January 26, 2015, it got a middling critical reception. The worst part being that I agree with a lot of the criticisms regarding it. Its story is a bit weak, its combat is simplistic, and the guns you get later on don't really fit the game's vibe. I'm not here to tell you that Dying Light is some misunderstood masterpiece, but I am here to tell you that I really like it. I've beaten this game 4 times already, and every single time I end up appreciating it even more. Dying Light is a game that's somehow more than the sum of its parts. Let me explain. In Dying Light, you play as Kyle Crane, an operative for the GRE, a Sadie humanitarian aid organization. Crane is sent on a secret mission to a zombie-infested city where he must find out more about the virus that is quickly spreading between the civilian population. I like the story of Dying Light. I think its main strengths lie in its simplicity and relatability. Every quest Crane gets from the survivors feels urgent. He constantly needs to search the city for food, medicine, and even electricity. And these don't feel like fetch quests because Crane himself is first on the list of people that needs these things. Everything in the game is a conduit for the player to experience its gameplay. This will become important later. Even the villain helps in that regard. He's so badly written that he does a complete 180 and ends up being memorable. Rice will remorselessly kill the people working for him, but when dealing with Crane, a legitimate thorn in his plans mind you, he will set up these elaborate wily coyote traps just for the player to have an excuse to do more parkour. And rightfully so, because the parkour in this game is incredible. Making your own routes, seamlessly jumping across rooftops is something that will never get old to me. On top of that, it solves another problem. In the Assassin's Creed games, running on the street is usually faster than parkour. We still do it though because it's cooler. Mirror's Edge solves that problem by making the street level inaccessible. Dying Light's solution is even more interesting. The city streets are infested with zombies, making parkour not only the more fun way of traversing the world, but also your only safe option. Unlike the parkour, Dying Light's combat is not anything to write home about. Just like Dead Island, you hit zombies with a stick and they fall over in a funny ragdoll animation. It's functional. It's also host to one of my favorite moves in gaming history, the dropkick. Kyle Crane is apparently prime Randy Orton because his dropkicks can send enemies into the stratosphere. I mean, this move is worth the price of admission in and of itself. It's a bit game breaking, but who cares? It single-handedly makes Dying Light's combat memorable. You also get guns in the halfway point of the game, but they feel so out of place. Whenever you're forced to use them, it turns Dying Light into a mediocre Call of Duty clone. You'll also constantly find ammo for them, making it so the game's world becomes infinitely less hostile. Dying Light is clearly a game full of ups and downs, but for me, the thing that ties everything together and elevates them is the game's atmosphere. Dying Light has the unenviable mission of needing to be a scary open world game. Horror games are usually linear, so they can control every bit of the environment, when to build tension and when to release it. While I wouldn't call Dying Light an outright horror game, horror is entrenched in each and every one of its design decisions. Horror is a very difficult thing to pull off. Too much of it and the player is overwhelmed. Too little and the player isn't scared. The way Dying Light strikes that balance is really smart. There's a day and night cycle. In the daytime, zombies do roam the streets, but they're usually quite manageable. But when darkness falls and the light dies, if you will, the volatiles come out. Volatiles are these terrifying creatures. They're quick, they can take a lot of damage, and they will most likely kill you if they catch you. The game becomes 10 times more difficult at night. So all of a sudden, now there's a light tension in the daytime as you're forced to engage with the game in ways other than the main story. You look for supplies wherever you can, and most importantly, create safe houses to hide in the night. And in theory, Dying Light safe houses shouldn't work. They're copy-pasted outposts, not unlike the ones you'd find in a game like Far Cry. But where Far Cry tells you to complete these outposts to fill in a checklist, Dying Light tells you to complete these safe houses or you die. A fairly effective marketing strategy if you ask me. The atmosphere is what brings everything together. The open world, the parkour, the horror elements, even the combat. This is why I love Dying Light. In isolation, every mechanic has its problems, but it's easy to forget about them when everything comes together so well. And a lot of this is what Dying Light 2 got wrong, but before we can talk about it, we need to talk about Dying Light's expansions. Mainly the following. This is where I feel we got the first warning signs of what was to come. Now there's a lot to like about the following. The overarching plot about the cult with the potential superpower of curing the zombie virus is interesting, and it also offers a unique mission structure. Instead of a linear mission structure, the following gives you unique side missions to complete that are very close in quality to the actual main missions. The main selling point of the following was that you could drive a car. This sounds cool until you realize that driving replaces the parkour, which was the best part of the game. And look, the driving and car management are by and large fine. I understand they wanted to try something new, but I feel like it's a misguided way to do so. When you de-emphasize Dying Light's best feature, it becomes a lot less interesting to play. I was excited to learn the rooftops of a new city. Instead, I got an alright zombie game. I liked it, but I sorely missed the parkour. This is where things start to go wrong, because this is the first time it feels like Techland didn't really understand what made Dying Light great. As a DLC, it's fine to try something new and stray away from your original gameplay loop, but what happens when you do that for your next mainline entry? Dying Light was a massive hit, selling over 20 million copies. So the only logical step forward for Techland was to start production on a sequel. That production, however, would go horribly wrong. But to understand where Dying Light 2 went wrong, we need to go back to 2011 and talk about the reveal trailer of the original Dead Island. This trailer shows the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, but in reverse. It's haunting to look at and it gets its message across incredibly well. It's a trailer people still talk about more than 15 years after it debuted. Despite not showing any gameplay, this trailer promised that Dead Island would be a zombie game with depth where you'll care about the people around you. The problem being that Dead Island is a light-hearted game about hitting zombies with a stick. It completely departs from all the emotional weight that the original trailer had. And look, Dead Island is a fine, if a bit forgettable zombie game to play with your friends, but it never comes close to reaching that trailer's potential. But that's alright, it's not like they're going to repeat that at a much bigger scale, right Techland? Dying Light 2 trailers are some of the most impressive you'll ever see. The game was first announced in E3 2018 and had another trailer in E3 of the following year as well. Now, these trailers are important for two reasons. First of all, they show a lot of things that didn't make it into the final game. The graphics and especially the shadows are downgraded in the final release of the game, and there's a whole bunch of gameplay mechanics and weapons that just didn't make it into the final cut. The second reason why these trailers are important is because the game looked nearly complete. So when Dying Light 2 was delayed indefinitely in early 2020, that came as a large shock to a lot of people. This is when reports about the working conditions at Techland started popping up. PC Gamer probably had the most detailed report, claiming that the higher-ups' management style was not conducive to the making of the game. It was described as being like the Eye of Sauron, where higher-ups would micromanage a lot, delaying the progress of development. Furthermore, they insisted on using the outdated Chroma engine instead of newer and more commonly used engines. There's even a part about outside consultants with little experience in game development being brought on to help, only for them to contribute next to nothing. Which is why I regret to inform you that the creator of parkour probably wasn't that helpful in the creation of Dying Light's parkour. And while this apparent firestorm was happening over at Techland, we started getting a lot of promises about the game. Promises that seemed too good to be true. The E3 2018 trailer showed an entire area that was later found to be called Elysium that never made it into the game. Your choices were made out to be these game-changing events that would lead to you missing out on 50% of the game's content, and my personal favorite, the tweet saying that the time needed to beat Dying Light 2 will be as much as walking from Warsaw to Madrid. For any of you that haven't tried out this wonderful trip, it would take more than 500 hours for it to be completed, depending on traffic. But okay, wait, stop. Was that a threat? I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy to play almost any game for over 500 hours, let alone Dying Light 2. And I know they later clarified that this number takes into account repeat playthroughs to try out all different choices, but still, who would want this? Dying Light 2 took 7 years to release. It was a development cycle marked by chaos, and that would carry over to the final product as well. When Dying Light 2 launched on the 4th of February 2022, it was met largely with apathy. It had a moderate amount of bugs at launch, but it wasn't cyberpunk. The prevailing sentiment for Dying Light 2 was disappointment. I was one of the people disappointed in the game, but if you asked me before I replayed it, I wouldn't be able to tell you why. Well, when I did finally replay it, I almost instantly remembered why. I played it after the patch that supposedly fixed a lot of things, and I wasn't really impressed. The first thing you'll be greeted by is the option to skip the prologue. That's always a good sign, getting the ability to not play the game you paid for. But the prologue was indeed a bit boring. It was a tutorial that went at a glacial pace, so when I skipped it, I thought I would be able to quickly start playing the game. But no, there's even more tutorials waiting on the other side of it. Look, I get that tutorials are one of the hardest things to get right in a game. It's impossible to account for all the different kinds of players that will be playing your game. But Dying Light 2 is so afraid to leave you to your own devices to the point that it becomes very annoying very quickly. Every small bit of it is tutorialized to death, and it really starts off on the wrong foot. Already, the atmosphere that made the original is gone here. Ironically, the devs being terrified of letting go of your hand led to Dying Light 2 being a lot less scary. And as much as I would like for this to be a tutorial only issue, it only points to the wider problem, and that is the game's story. It's incredibly boring. You play as Aiden. I've played through this game twice, and I can't remember his last name, nor do I think my life will improve significantly if I look it up. 15 years after the events of the last game, the zombie virus has spread throughout the entire world, and Aiden arrives at a new city in search of his long-lost sister Mia. Aiden and Mia were experimented on when they were children. Aiden escaped, Mia did not. Right away, there are multiple problems. Crane was replaced for seemingly no reason, as Aiden is very similar in nature to Crane, but without the character development he went through in the first game. Another issue is that since this is 15 years after the outbreak, Dying Light 2 faces the issue every long-running zombie media runs into. It loses its tension. People have now learned to live in the apocalypse, and zombies are more part of the backdrop than an interesting threat. Since Aiden is a hardened apocalypse vet and is only looking for his sister instead of trying to survive, he mostly does fetch quests for people in exchange for information. Now instead of having this battle against impossible odds, you're just a guy that does errands. It's so much less interesting than the original, and these cutscenes take forever. Characters will drone on in conversations that would have a valid chance in replacing sleep medication. Then there's the choices, or at least the illusion of them. Dying Light 2's story is based on which faction you'll choose to help, and we'll get to that, but I feel like in an attempt to make both factions have their pros and cons, they managed to make everyone unlikable. There is one exception, Hakon. Wait a minute, I've seen that face before. That's David Bell. So now we know he at least did something. Hakon is also a pretty bad guy, but at least he has some personality. But then around the midpoint of the game, you'll find out that Hakon has been up to some pretty bad things in his free time. He then gets attacked by a mysterious sniper. Now you get one of those heavily advertised choices. Do you help him or let him die? Spoiler alert, it barely matters. In both cases, he'll disappear for 10 hours, and the only thing this choice dictates is how mad at you he'll be when he comes back. While we don't know the exact budget Dying Light 2 had, it's almost definitely in the tens of millions and potentially in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And when you have this much money, you probably wouldn't want to spend it on something half of your player base wouldn't be able to see. If I had spent $5 million on a set piece, I'd make sure everyone saw it. I get that, it's logical. It makes sense why your choices don't have that much of an impact. I don't blame Techland for that. I do blame them for advertising their game on an inherently impossible to achieve basis. These choices only detracted from the overall experience. But what about that district they advertised that would change based on your choices? Well, you get one choice, and depending on it, that district either becomes flooded or a desolate wasteland with almost identical loot. What a choice. But besides the direct choices, you're also presented with a more general moral dilemma. In the game, there are two factions. Both of them have a different way of handling the apocalypse, but it doesn't really matter. There is no dilemma. The big mistake Techland made with this is that both factions give you rewards if you choose to go with them. One side gives you upgrades regarding combat, the other regarding parkour. Do I want ziplines or car alarms? This entire choice becomes pointless because the parkour is the best part about the game. So the question goes from who do you want to side with to do you want to have fun? Because the one saving grace this game has is its gameplay and especially the parkour. Despite its faults, Dying Light 2 is still a fun game. I won't get too much into it because it's very similar to the original's parkour system. They did add a wingsuit which was by and large fine. Unlike the parkour, Dying Light 2's combat was a clear upgrade. Fighting human enemies is a vastly improved experience, Aiden has a larger moveset, and I'm probably in the minority here, but I didn't mind the lack of guns as they were mishandled in the original. But the thing that ultimately lets Dying Light 2 down is its atmosphere. The glue that held everything together and made the original a much better game than it had any right to be is just not here anymore. Nighttime is a complete non-factor in this game, and I played it after the patch that supposedly fixed it. It goes from something that was a legitimate threat to a mild inconvenience. I never felt like I was in danger at night. Even if the volatiles found me, I could always easily escape by climbing up the nearest building. I could have forgiven the boring story or non-existent moral decision, but messing up the night this bad makes the rest of the game fall apart. Despite the game selling over 5 million copies, fans were not left satisfied. To their credit, Techland apologized by giving everyone the game's first DLC, Bloody Ties, for free. Aw, Techland, you didn't have to. I'd much rather you hadn't actually. Bloody Ties is an arena mode. You get different challenges, and depending on how well you complete them, you get different rewards. As per usual, the parkour challenges are fun, and the rest is whatever. Again though, what lets it down is its story. The whole reason you partake in these challenges is that you want to save another person that you just met who has been imprisoned in the Colosseum-style arena. But after a couple of hours of playing, when you finally do find him, spoiler alert I guess, he doesn't want to be saved. I get what Techland is trying to do here. We're supposed to feel like he's acting out of character, and we need to work even harder to make him snap out of it. When for example God of War does it with Atreus, it works because you know that the way he's acting is not his usual self. but I've barely seen this dude in character to know he's acting out of it, so this whole DLC just feels like a massive waste of time. Bloody Ties is a good summary of Dying Light 2. Fun gameplay that is let down by almost everything else around it. But Techland were not done apologizing, because their next game, Dying Light the Beast, would be free for all owners of the Ultimate Edition of Dying Light 2. And this will probably be an unpopular opinion, but I did not like the Beast. The Beast was originally meant to be Dying Light 2's second major DLC drop, but Techland decided it deserved its own fully fledged game. This game marks the long-awaited return of Kyle Crane, who, after the events of the following, is captured and experimented on for 15 years by the evil villain. The premise of The Beast is shockingly close to that of Dying Light 2. Protagonist gets experimented on, escapes, and now wants revenge. The difference here is that Crane is now half volatile, and when he gets mad enough, he'll turn full volatile for a short burst. It's a cool new addition to gameplay. Other than that, The Beast shares a lot of similarities with the other two games. The story, besides a really solid twist near the end, is weak, but the gameplay is really good. So the question is, does it have the atmosphere to carry it to greatness? Kind of, but it also creates new problems for itself. The Beast's atmosphere is a lot closer to that of the original. Zombies pose more of a tangible threat, the city's inhabitants are more afraid of them, and the night is challenging again. However, there are points where you can clearly tell the game was originally developed as DLC. If the majority of the Beast's missions took place inside its city, I would have loved this game. But they don't. Most of them take place in the city's outskirts. And these outskirts were not really made with parkour in mind. They're these mostly wide open areas with a small amount of buildings. Your options to go to them being either running or taking a car. But I don't play Dying Light for its mediocre driving or running in a straight line. I play it for the parkour, the atmosphere, and whacking enemies with a stick. Anything added beyond that, which doesn't help these three core tenets, just dilutes the overall experience. And even driving to your objective could have been fine if we had a fast travel option. But you can't fast travel in this game. And I know Techland will tell us that this is done to immerse us and whatever, but this feels like padding the runtime. Here you might say, however, that the original Dying Light only had one fast travel point, and even that only existed to serve as a loading screen between the two different sandboxes. But on the one hand, Dying Light's world was built entirely with parkour in mind. Not having fast travel only helped to highlight its main strength. On the other hand, the Beast's lack of fast travel only highlights its weakest elements. And the cherry on top is the level gating. This is a personal pet peeve of mine, but I hate level gating in games, especially when it's done so arbitrarily. If you're at the recommended level for a mission, your weapons work just fine. But if you have the audacity to even be one level below the recommended threshold, you might as well be hitting your enemies with a wet sponge. Why is Techland's idea of improving Dying Light to make it closer to a Ubisoft game? Dying Light told you to do side content to survive. The Beast tells you to do side content to make the game less annoying to play. And I know your counterpoint to this, just do the side missions. But if you want me to do them, make me care about the world and its inhabitants. The Beast doesn't do that. Forcing them had the opposite effect on me. At that point, I didn't want to do them out of sheer spite. If we erased Dying Light from history and we viewed Dying Light 2 without the context of the original, I would have told you that it is a very solid game with a weak story. But regardless of context, The Beast is a 10-hour experience stretched out to a 20-hour game. Because there were moments that I really enjoyed The Beast, especially in its more linear missions. But to get to the good parts of the game, you also have to dig through a lot of filler. The Beast fixed a lot of Dying Light 2's problems, but it also missed the point in its own unique way. Admittedly though, fans and critics enjoyed The Beast a lot more than I did, giving it a very solid critical reception. Many claimed it to be a return to form, but I just don't see it. The Beast takes too many steps back for me to celebrate the few steps forward it does make. And again, to Techland's credit, they released a big update called Restored Land. It introduces a lot of interesting features like survival mechanics and a persistent world where zombies don't respawn after being killed. It's a cool way to revisit the game if you already liked it, but it doesn't tackle its core problems. So where does the franchise go from here? Well, the plan is fairly obvious. Dying Light 3 was already teased at the end of the beast with the evil helicopter popping out of nowhere to taunt Crane, but what will that game look like? Will it finally focus on what made it good in the first place, or will it further dilute its gameplay with even more mechanics? I don't want Dying Light to give me more gameplay elements. I definitely don't want it to give me 500 hours of gameplay. I just wanted to remember what made it great in the first place. Thank you for watching the video, and thank you for 1000 subscribers as well. This is a mind-blowing number, and I wouldn't be here without every single one of you. I can't thank you enough. If you want to watch the history of another trilogy of games that never really found their way, you can click here to watch how the Watch Dogs franchise self-destructed. I'll see you in the next one.